Oh, have you ever been judged before people even knew your story? Imagine walking onto a plane, ticket in hand, confident and proud, only to be told you don't belong in the very seat you've earned. That's what happened when a black teenager was pulled from first class by a flight attendant who had no idea his father owned the airline. But what would you do if your child faced that kind of humiliation? Would you shout, "Stay silent," or choose a different kind of power, the quiet one that makes the whole world listen? This isn't just a story about racism or pride. It's about grace under pressure, the strength to rise above anger, and the moment when truth humbles arrogance. It's about a father who could have destroyed everything, but instead rebuilt something better. If you've ever been underestimated, or if you've ever wondered how dignity wins in a world obsessed with power, this story will stay with you. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and let's fly into a story where justice comes softly, but lands hard. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps more people hear stories that truly matter. Sometimes, the most powerful voice is the one that waits. It was just after sunrise at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. The glass panels of Terminal 3 were washed in gold light, and the sound of rolling suitcases echoed like distant waves. Dr. Everett Cole, 52, walked slowly beside his daughter Amara, 17. They looked like any father and daughter heading west for a short trip, casual clothes, matching blue carry-ons, the quiet ease of people who enjoy each other's company. But today was not an ordinary flight. 3 days earlier, Everett had signed the final acquisition papers for Sky North Airlines, completing a deal worth nearly $4.8 billion. He had spent a lifetime building Cole Aeronautics Group, a defense and aerospace company that now supplied engines, software, and safety systems to airlines around the world. And yet, despite owning more than anyone else in the terminal, he carried himself like a teacher on vacation, humble, unhurried, almost invisible. Amara smiled up at him. "Are you sure no one's going to recognize you?" Everett chuckled. "Only if they read the business section of the journal, and most people don't do that at 6 in the morning. He adjusted his baseball cap and sunglasses. "I want to see how this airline really treats its passengers. No PR, no warning, just us." Amara nodded. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and a trace of pride. They reached the Sky North Premium counter, where a young attendant named Rachel greeted them. "Good morning. Where are you traveling today, Seattle?" Everett replied. "Flight SN 1742. Rachel typed quickly, then hesitated. Her smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for Amara to notice. "First class?" Rachel asked again, as if double-checking. "Yes," Everett said simply. "Seats 1A and 1B. Rachel blinked, then nodded. "Of course. Could I see your IDs again?" Please. Everett handed over their passports. She looked at the screen, back at them, then back at the screen. Everything matched. Yet her hand moved slower than before, like doubt weighed on her fingertips. After an awkward pause, she printed the boarding passes. "Here you go. Enjoy your flight," Amara whispered once they walked away. Why did she check our IDs 3 times? Everett smiled gently. Sometimes people need time to catch up with their own assumptions. At Gate C-12, the morning crowd buzzed with coffee and impatience. A group of business travelers in suits joked loudly near the window. A mother tried to calm her toddler with a chocolate muffin, and Everett stood among them, quietly, scrolling through a report on his phone about maintenance delays, ironically, the same airline he now owned. When boarding began, Group 1, first class, the gate agent called the names, cheerful and practiced, Mr. Walters, Mrs. Andrews, Welcome aboard. Then, Dr. Cole and Miss Cole. The agent scanned their passes, looked at the screen, then at them. She hesitated, the way someone might when something doesn't fit their mental picture. Her eyes flicked briefly to Amara's braids, then to Everett's dark skin. Enjoy your flight, she said at last, her tone flat. Everett thanked her, guiding Amara down the jet bridge, inside the aircraft. The cool air smelled of leather and citrus cleaner. The first-class cabin was small, just 8 seats, wide and soft. A man in a gray suit sipped champagne. A woman read The Economist. The atmosphere was calm, expensive, and quietly self-important. Standing near the galley was Linda Parks, the lead flight attendant. Her uniform was crisp, her blonde hair pinned neatly. She smiled at each passenger as if she'd rehearsed every expression. Until she reached Everett and Amara, her smile froze, just slightly. "Good morning. May I see your boarding passes again?" Everett paused. "They were just scanned at the gate." "Yes, I know," she said quickly, still smiling. "Just to confirm your seats." He handed her the tickets. She glanced at them, then at the empty seats 1A and 1B, the best in the cabin. Her eyebrows lifted a fraction. "I see. Right this way." Her voice had changed. It wasn't rude, not exactly, but the warmth she offered the others was gone. Everett sat down beside the window. Amara leaned closer and whispered, "She didn't smile at us." Everett's lips curved softly. "Not every smile means welcome, sweetheart. Sometimes silence says more." Linda returned moments later with pre-flight drinks. For the man in gray champagne in a tall glass. For the woman with the magazine orange juice with a lemon twist. For Everett and Amara, 2 cups of water. In plastic. "Thank you," Everett said, voice steady. Linda nodded and walked away without eye contact. Amara's face tightened. "She didn't even give us towels." Everett took a slow breath. "Observe first, react later." Outside, the sun climbed higher. The engines hummed to life. A ground crew member signaled the pilot, and the plane began to push back. Through the small oval window, Everett watched the runway blur into motion. He thought about his own employees, tens of thousands, across manufacturing plants in Texas, Florida, and Ohio. He thought about the promise he'd made when buying this airline to make the skies fair for everyone who flew. And now, sitting in seat 1A, he was already witnessing why that promise mattered. Amara looked out at the clouds. Her reflection in the glass showed a mixture of excitement and unease. "Do you think she treated us that way because—" She didn't finish the sentence. Everett's eyes softened. "Because we don't look like what she expects first class to look like." Amara nodded. He placed a hand over hers. "Then let's see what happens when patience takes the front seat." The captain's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Sky North Flight 1742, nonstop service to Seattle." As the plane taxied to the runway, the hum of the engines deepened, steady and confident. Everett leaned back, eyes calm, posture relaxed, but his mind already recording every small detail, the look, the tone, the subtle differences that told a larger story. Every change begins with observation, he thought. Every injustice starts quietly. He glanced at Amara, who now closed her eyes and rested her head against the seat. Everett smiled faintly. Whatever this flight held, he would face it with grace and teach his daughter that dignity could not be taken, only surrendered. The aircraft lifted off, breaking through the clouds into a bright, endless sky. Neither of them knew that before this flight landed. The entire airline would be forced to confront its own blind spots, and the world would see what patience power and truth looked like at 30,000 feet. The cabin lights glowed in a soft amber hue as passengers continued to board. The hum of luggage wheels and the polite chorus of "excuse me" blended with the mechanical sighs of the air vents. Everett Cole adjusted his seatbelt and offered a brief smile to Amara. She tried to relax, tapping her fingers against the armrest, pretending not to notice the stares from two passengers seated across the aisle. One of them, a man in a navy suit, whispered something to his companion, and both chuckled under their breath. Linda Parks, the lead flight attendant, moved briskly through the aisle with professional grace. Her voice was warm as she welcomed passengers until she reached Everett again. "Mr. Cole," she said, hesitating slightly as if testing the name. "If you need anything, please let me know." The tone wasn't unfriendly, but it lacked the easy warmth she had given others. Everett nodded, his eyes calm but observant. When the last passenger sat down, Linda closed the cabin door and gave the safety demonstration. She avoided eye contact with Everett and Amara. Her voice carried a mechanical rhythm, trained, careful, distant. Everett noticed everything: the way she bent slightly toward the older businessman to check on his champagne, the way she smiled wider at the couple in designer coats, and the subtle chill in her demeanor when she walked past their row. Amara leaned closer. "She's pretending not to see us." Everett's reply was soft, deliberate. Pretending is easier than admitting what she feels. As the engines hummed and the plane rolled down the taxiway, Everett glanced at the polished logo on the bulkhead Sky North Airlines above and beyond. The irony was bitter. He remembered writing that slogan years ago, back when he was only a consultant. Back then, he'd believed it meant excellence. Now it sounded like an excuse. When the plane lifted into the air, the cabin tilted and leveled with a faint shudder. Linda's voice came through the intercom, thanking passengers for choosing Sky North. She began her service routine, cart rolling down the aisle like a silver train. "She reached seat 1A. Would you like a beverage?" Sir Everett smiled politely. "Coffee, please. Black. For you." Miss Amara hesitated. "Just water. Thank you." Linda poured both drinks quickly. She handed the coffee without the small silver tray every other passenger had received. She gave Amara a half-filled cup and moved on. Amara frowned. Everyone else got their drinks in glass. Everett stirred his coffee slowly. What matters is not how it's served, but how we respond to it. Amara sighed. "It still feels wrong." "It is wrong," he said. "But sometimes you have to let wrong reveal itself fully before you correct it." The businessman across the aisle raised his hand. "Excuse me, miss, could you turn up the air conditioning? It's warm in here." Linda nodded quickly, adjusting the control near Everett's seat. A gust of cold air poured directly on him. She didn't seem to notice, or perhaps she did. Amara crossed her arms, rubbing them for warmth. Minutes passed in silence. The cabin smelled of roasted nuts and perfume. Everett opened a small notebook and began jotting down notes. Employee behavior bias indicators lack of consistency. His handwriting was neat, each word measured like a scientist cataloging evidence. Halfway through the flight, Linda returned for meal service. She leaned toward the businessman. "Would you like the salmon or the beef tenderloin?" "Mr. Johnson beef, please. And for you, Dr. Cole." Her tone sharpened slightly around the title, as if it didn't fit. "Beef tenderloin is fine," he answered. "For your daughter, salmon," Amara said quietly. Linda nodded but didn't write anything down. "I'll be right back." When she returned, the meals looked impeccable, but not identical. The man across the aisle received his dinner on china with polished cutlery. Everett and Amara's plates came with stainless steel utensils and paper napkins. Everett noticed, but he didn't react. He simply asked, "Did we run out of the regular service sets?" Linda froze for a fraction of a second. "Oh, these were just closer at hand." "Understood," Everett said gently. "Efficiency matters." Her smile tightened. "Exactly." Amara's appetite disappeared. She pushed her plate away, watching her father's calm expression. His composure confused her. It was both admirable and infuriating. "Dad," she whispered, "why do you let her do that?" "Because this isn't just about us," he replied. "It's about how truth exposes itself when no one is forced to hide." Later, when Linda came back to collect trays, a sudden turbulence jolted the cabin. Amara's glass of water tipped slightly, spilling a few drops on the floor. Linda's voice snapped. "Please be careful, miss." Everett's tone remained steady. "It was turbulence." Linda forced a laugh. "Of course. Still, we like to keep the cabin neat." She walked away briskly. Amara stared after her, stunned. Everett reached over, placing a calm hand over her trembling one. "She's revealing herself. Let her finish." A few rows back, Eleanor Chen, a passenger who'd been reading quietly, observed the entire exchange. Her brows drew together. She discreetly opened her phone camera and began recording. Everett didn't notice her. He gazed at the clouds outside, vast and pale against the morning light. They drifted like thoughts soft, indifferent, endless. The captain's voice interrupted. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're expecting mild turbulence as we pass over Denver. Please remain seated for now." Amara looked at her father. "Do you ever get tired of this?" He turned to her slowly. "Tired of what?" "Of having to prove you belong." Everett's eyes softened. "Every time I feel that way, I remember something my mother used to say. Dignity is not given, it's remembered." Amara smiled faintly. "She sounds wise." She was. She worked as a nurse for 30 years. People doubted her, too, but she never stopped standing tall. Silence lingered between them, gentle and full. Then a voice broke it. Linda stood at the front of the cabin, speaking to another crew member in hushed tones. Words like seat reassignment and upgrade confusion floated through the air. Everett caught them clearly. He raised his eyebrows, saying nothing, but his hand stilled on the notebook. Minutes later, Linda approached with a strained smile. "Dr. Cole, I'm so sorry, but there seems to be an issue with the manifest. Your seats may have been assigned in error. I'll need to verify with my supervisor." Amara's eyes widened. "What, we have boarding passes?" Linda's tone hardened slightly. "Just a quick verification, miss. Procedures?" Everett's gaze was calm, though his voice held weight. "Verification can wait until we land. We're already airborne." Linda hesitated. "I understand, but we prefer to clarify early." Everett leaned back. "Clarify away." She turned sharply, muttering something under her breath. The businessman across the aisle raised an eyebrow, whispering to his companion. "Unbelievable." Amara's jaw tightened. "I can't believe this is happening." Everett's voice lowered to a near whisper. "You'd be surprised how often it does." He opened his notebook again, writing only 3 words this time. Pattern confirmed. Continue. Outside the window, sunlight broke through thick clouds, painting the sky in streaks of white and gold. Inside the cabin, the tension thickened like the air before a storm. Linda disappeared into the galley, pulling out a phone and speaking in low, hurried tones. Everett couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. He could see them in her posture, stiff, defensive, certain she was right. Amara glanced at him, whispering, "What are you going to do, Watch?" He said simply, "And when the time comes, act." In that moment, he wasn't just a father traveling with his daughter. He was a man watching the system he now owned, watching it expose itself piece by piece. Amara rested her head against the seat again, her voice small. "You're not angry." Everett's answer was quiet, almost kind. "Anger burns fast. Change burns slow. I'm choosing the slow fire." The engines droned softly beneath their feet. The clouds drifted past, bright and endless. In the stillness, Everett's mind worked like a clock, patient, precise, and certain that justice would find its way before the plane touched down in Seattle. The plane leveled at 31,000 feet. A pale ribbon of sunlight poured through the window, cutting across the cabin floor. The hum of the engine softened into a steady rhythm, almost peaceful, if not for the quiet tension still circling around seats 1A and 1B. Everett Cole glanced at the flight tracker on the screen before him. Still 2 hours to Seattle. Amara had her earbuds in, pretending to watch a movie, but her eyes were fixed on the reflection of the aisle in the dark glass. She was alert now, no longer the curious traveler she had been that morning. She'd learned, in less than an hour, that people could make you feel small without ever raising their voice. Linda Parks reappeared from the galley with a tray of warm towels. Her tone was bright as she greeted each passenger by name. "Mr. Johnson, Ms. Whitaker, Mr. Sanders." When she reached Everett, the brightness dulled again. "Would you like a towel, sir?" she asked, as if it were optional, not a courtesy. Everett accepted with a calm nod, his movements deliberate. Amara extended her hand politely, but Linda seemed not to notice and moved on. The teenager's fingers froze mid-air. Everett said nothing. He unfolded his towel and wiped his hands slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon outside the window. The silence between father and daughter said more than words. 10 minutes later, Linda returned, checking seatbelts, gathering cups, and straightening trays. When she reached Amara, she paused, frowning slightly. "Miss, could you keep your backpack under the seat? It's blocking the aisle." Amara looked down. The bag was well within the seat space, neatly tucked. "It's already under, ma'am," she said softly. Linda pursed her lips. "Please, just make sure it stays that way." She moved on, leaving the faint smell of perfume and authority. Amara turned to her father. "Why does she keep finding something wrong with us?" Everett took a breath, his voice quiet but steady. "Because some people confuse power with control. The smaller the stage, the more they perform." He offered her a gentle smile. "But remember, the audience is always larger than they think." Amara didn't understand what he meant until she noticed the woman across the aisle. Eleanor Chen pretending to scroll her phone, but subtly recording again. She caught Amara's eye and gave a small nod, like a silent ally. Everett pressed the button on his seat, reclining slightly. He closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to listen to the whispers, the footsteps, the rhythms of a system that spoke louder through behavior than through policy. He could feel the imbalance in the air, the subtle shifts of tone, when Linda addressed others versus him. It was almost mathematical precision bias, predictable and patterned. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. "Ladies and gentlemen," came the captain's calm voice, "we may experience light turbulence for the next few minutes. Please keep your seat belts fastened." The aircraft trembled gently, not enough to worry seasoned travelers, but enough to jolt a few cups. Linda steadied herself and hurried to the galley. When she returned, her hair slightly out of place, she saw Amara's empty plastic cup had rolled to the floor. She sighed audibly, bending down to pick it up. "Please be careful. Miss, we try to maintain order here." Everett opened his eyes and spoke for the first time in a sharper tone. That wasn't carelessness. That was turbulence. His voice wasn't loud, but the precision of it cut through the air. Linda froze, her hand still holding the cup. She gave a stiff nod. "Of course. I apologize." Then she turned quickly. "Retreating to the galley again," Amara whispered. "That's the first time you sounded upset." He smiled faintly. Even patience has an edge. Sometimes it has to show itself to be heard. The businessman, Mr. Johnson, leaned slightly toward Everett and murmured, "Unbelievable. You've been nothing but polite." Everett gave a small nod, grateful but unwilling to turn the moment into theater. He had learned long ago that dignity was often tested in public and proven in silence. Time stretched. The sky outside shifted from bright white to muted blue. The cabin lights dimmed for the meal service. Linda appeared again, pushing her cart slowly. "Dinner options tonight are chicken risotto or grilled salmon," she said in that same rehearsed tone. She served everyone ahead of Everett with efficiency, calling each by name. When she arrived at seat 1A, she hesitated. "And for you, sir, chicken risotto. Thank you." She placed it down without a tray liner or silverware. "We've run short," she said, before he could ask. Amara looked at her father's plate, then at the others. Every other passenger had linen napkins and polished utensils. Her voice shook slightly. "That's not true. I saw extras on her cart." Everett placed a calming hand on her arm. "Let her have this moment, sweetheart. She's showing us something valuable." Linda continued serving. When she reached the couple in 1C and 1D, she leaned in to chat about wine selections. Her laughter filled the space like perfume, sweet but heavy. Everett picked up his fork, the lightweight metal clinking against the porcelain. He chewed slowly, each bite a study in restraint. "Halfway through the meal," Amara whispered, "I feel like everyone's watching us." Everett replied, "Good. They should." Eleanor Chen's camera was still recording quietly on her lap. Across the aisle, Mr. Johnson scrolled through his phone, but his eyes occasionally flicked toward Linda, disapproving. Everett finished eating and set his fork down neatly. He took out his notebook again. The pages were already half full. He wrote one line across the middle of the page. "Respect denied teaches louder than respect declared." He closed the book gently, resting it on his knee. Linda returned to clear plates, her expression unreadable. When she reached Everett, her tone softened slightly. "Did you enjoy your meal?" "Sir, it was sufficient," he said evenly. Her eyes narrowed a fraction. "If there's anything you need—" "There is," he interrupted, his voice still calm. "Consistency." For the first time, she didn't have a rehearsed answer. She blinked, nodded once, and turned away. Amara stared at her father, half in awe. "How do you stay that calm?" Everett looked at her, his eyes steady and full of quiet power. "Because I'm not here to win an argument. I'm here to learn where the system breaks." The hum of the engines deepened. The seatbelt sign flicked on again. The captain spoke once more, his tone reassuring. "We'll begin our descent into Seattle in about 50 minutes. Weather is clear." Amara exhaled. "Almost over." "Not yet," Everett said softly. "Sometimes the hardest part is the landing." Linda appeared one last time with dessert small cheesecakes topped with strawberries. She placed one on each tray except Everett's. He smiled politely, declining to ask why. Amara whispered, "She skipped you on purpose." He replied, "That's fine. Sweetness doesn't always come on a plate." As the plane began its descent, the lights brightened. Passengers adjusted their seats, gathered belongings, and thanked Linda for her service. When she reached Everett's row again, she paused. "I hope everything was satisfactory." He looked up at her and said, "That depends on what you mean by satisfactory." Their eyes met for a long moment. Something shifted in her face, confusion, maybe guilt, but she said nothing, only nodded stiffly and moved on. Amara turned to the window. Below, the world unfolded in tiny lights and rivers of motion. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "I don't understand how people can treat others like this," Everett answered, "because they've been told stories that make them feel bigger when someone else feels small. But stories can change." He reached for her hand. "That's why we're here." The wheels touched down with a low, steady rumble. The cabin erupted in the usual applause of nervous travelers relieved to be on solid ground. Linda's voice returned, thanking everyone for flying SkyNorth. Everett gathered his things slowly. His notebook slipped slightly from his hand, the corner catching the light. The page was marked with a single phrase he'd written before boarding. "Observe first, react later." He closed it with a quiet snap. As passengers began to stand, Linda gestured for them to remain seated until the door opened. Her face was calm again, her professionalism restored. But Everett noticed the faint tremor in her hand as she reached for the intercom. Whatever she had done on this flight, he knew it was not over. Not for her, not for him, and not for SkyNorth Airlines. The door opened. Fresh air rushed in, cool and scented with rain. Amara stepped into the aisle, relief washing over her. Everett followed, his expression unreadable. Behind them, Eleanor Chen stopped recording. She looked at her phone screen, replayed a few seconds, and whispered under her breath, "People need to see this." The cabin lights brightened as SkyNorth Flight 1742 taxied toward the gate. The hum of voices returned, seatbelts clicking, phones chiming to life, passengers exchanging polite small talk. But around seats 1A and 1B, there was a quiet tension thick enough to feel. Amara sat stiffly, backpack already on her lap. Everett rested both hands on the notebook in front of him, eyes closed, breathing slow and deliberate, as if holding his calm by force of will. Linda Park stood at the front, voice poised and cheerful as she thanked passengers for flying SkyNorth. Yet her eyes, when they flickered briefly toward Everett, carried something else, a mix of irritation and unease. She had spent the last hour avoiding his gaze, but the discomfort had grown into something sharper. In her mind, this passenger was a disruption, an anomaly that didn't fit the story she told herself about order and control. When the door opened, passengers began to stand. Linda's tone hardened, her professionalism thinning. "Please remain seated until it's your turn to exit," she instructed, though half the cabin was already in motion. Everett stayed seated, as did Amara. He could sense what was coming even before it began. A voice from behind broke through the noise. "Excuse me," said the businessman. "Mr. Johnson, let them go ahead. They're right in the front." Linda smiled tightly. "Thank you, sir, but we need to handle something first." Her emphasis on something hung in the air like a quiet threat. Everett looked at her evenly. "Handle what? Exactly?" "There seems to be a discrepancy with your tickets," she replied. "If you could just wait a moment. I've already contacted a supervisor." Amara's heartbeat quickened. A discrepancy. Our tickets were scanned twice. Linda didn't answer. She stepped toward the intercom near the cockpit and pressed a button. "Supervisor to gate C12, please," she said into the mic, her tone firm. The businessman across the aisle frowned. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, not quietly enough. Everett rose slowly, gathering his things. "Miss Parks," he said softly, "I assure you there is no discrepancy. Let's not turn an error into an incident." Her jaw tightened. "I'm following procedure." He nodded once, almost sadly. "Yes, I'm sure you are." The aisle had gone silent. Passengers watched, phones discreetly angled upward. Eleanor Chen, ever observant, started recording again, her lens steady. When the jet bridge door opened, a man in a gray suit entered. "I'm Brett Langley," he announced briskly. "Cabin supervisor." "What seems to be the issue?" Linda gestured toward Everett and Amara. These two were seated in first class, but their names don't match the upgrade list. I need to verify their tickets. Brett's eyes swept over the pair. Everett's calm composure, Amara's trembling hands. "Sir, could I see your boarding passes?" Everett handed them over. "Of course." Brett studied the tickets, frowning. Everything appeared correct, but something in his expression shifted. He looked uncertain, glancing at Linda. "The system shows these seats under another name." Everett's tone remained level. "That's interesting. The same system that scanned us at the gate without issue." "Yes, but occasionally the manifest lags behind." "I see. And your response is to assume the passengers are at fault." Brett hesitated. "It's standard to verify in person." Everett's voice cooled a degree. "You mean it's standard when the passengers look like me?" The words landed hard. A few passengers turned in their seats, guilt and curiosity flickering across their faces. Linda folded her arms defensively. "Sir, there's no need to make this about race." Everett regarded her evenly. "It became about race the moment you decided who belonged in this cabin." Amara wanted to speak, but he lifted a hand, slightly a signal to stay calm. His control was absolute, almost unnerving. Brett cleared his throat. "Let's step onto the jet bridge. Please, we'll sort this out quietly." Everett rose, gathering his jacket, his notebook tucked under one arm. Amara followed. Before leaving, Everett looked once more at the cabin, at the passengers pretending not to stare, at Eleanor's steady phone, at the small world that had just shrunk to a single moment of truth. "As they walked out," Amara whispered, "why don't you just tell them who you are?" He gave a faint smile. "Because what I am matters less than what they choose to see." The jet bridge was cool and sterile, its fluorescent lights humming faintly. Brett stood with a tablet, tapping nervously. "This should just take a minute," he said. Amara crossed her arms. "It's already taken too long." Linda followed them out, trying to project authority. "Security is on their way, just to be safe." Everett turned his head slightly. Safe from what? Linda hesitated. "It's company policy when ticket discrepancies involve first class." He nodded slowly. "Of course. Safety first." His voice was quiet, but carried a weight that made Brett shift uncomfortably. Within moments, a uniformed airport security officer appeared. Marcus Green, tall, composed, and younger than Everett by 2 decades. He approached with professional calm. "Everything okay here," Brett explained quickly. "Possible seating confusion. Just making sure the passengers are verified." Marcus glanced at Everett, then at the boarding passes in Brett's hand. His brow furrowed. These look perfectly valid. Linda spoke up. The system shows a mismatch. Marcus took the tablet from her. After a few taps, he looked up, his expression neutral but firm. System's fine. It's synced now. No discrepancy. They belong in 1A and 1B. Brett looked surprised. Are you sure? Positive? Marcus replied. Maybe the data was delayed. Linda's face reddened slightly. Then why did it show differently before? Because sometimes, Marcus said evenly, people see what they expect before they see what's true. Everett's gaze met his. The two men exchanged a silent understanding, one that needed no words. Brett exhaled heavily. All right. Looks like this was a misunderstanding. Everett's tone was courteous, but edged with quiet precision. Misunderstandings can still leave bruises. Mr. Langley, some just aren't visible. Amara's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She straightened her shoulders, mirroring her father's calm. Linda tried to recover her composure. I apologize for the inconvenience. Everett studied her face. You're not apologizing to me. You're apologizing to the version of yourself that realized she was wrong. Her mouth opened, then closed. There was nothing to say. Marcus stepped forward. Sir, you're free to board again whenever you're ready. Everett smiled faintly. Thank you, Officer Green, but I think we'll wait until everyone else is off. The security officer nodded, sensing the dignity behind the choice. As the last of the passengers exited, a soft echo of murmurs followed curiosity, sympathy, discomfort. Eleanor Chen lingered at the door, phone still in hand. Sir, she said quietly, I recorded everything. If you ever need Everett raised a gentle hand, thank you. But truth doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes it just needs to be witnessed. She nodded, understanding more than she expected. Minutes later, the jet bridge emptied. Everett turned to Amara. You see, dignity isn't silence. It's direction. It tells you where to stand when others push, Amara whispered. And where do we stand now? He looked toward the open terminal, lights reflecting off glass walls. Right here, until the system looks back at itself. Linda lingered behind them, still uneasy. She wanted to apologize again, but couldn't find words that felt real. Brett avoided eye contact, already typing something into his report, hoping to frame the incident as procedural confusion. Marcus stayed beside them, a quiet anchor in the chaos. Sir, he said, lowering his voice, for what it's worth. I'm sorry this happened. Some things shouldn't still happen in 2025. Everett smiled faintly. Apology accepted. But don't carry my burden. Son, just do your part to keep the next man from carrying his. As they walked toward the terminal, Amara asked softly, Do you think she'll get in trouble? He thought for a moment. I think she's already in trouble with her own reflection. In the distance, the airport speakers called out another boarding announcement, another flight to somewhere else. The world kept moving, indifferent. But inside Everett, a quiet resolve solidified like steel. This wasn't just about one flight. It was about every flight, every gate, every unseen moment where dignity had to fight for breath. He adjusted his cap, placed a hand on Amara's shoulder, and said, Let's go home. Behind them. Linda watched through the cabin doorway as they walked away. For the first time, she felt the weight of her own assumptions pressing down like gravity. She didn't know who that man truly was, but something inside her whispered she'd just made the biggest mistake of her career. She was right. The terminal buzzed with the rhythm of evening departures, the intercom blending with rolling luggage and half-finished phone calls. Everett Cole stood near the wide glass windows overlooking the tarmac, the sky now brushed with the last orange streaks of sunset. Amara sat quietly beside him, her reflection caught in the window pane, a silhouette of confusion and quiet heartbreak. The weight of what had happened in that narrow cabin still hung between them, heavier than the humid air outside. Everett held his phone loosely, scrolling through messages he wasn't reading. He could feel Amara's restlessness, the need to understand why he had chosen patience instead of anger. "Dad," she said finally, her voice small, "why didn't you tell them who you are? Why didn't you just end it right there?" Everett turned toward her, his gaze deep but kind. "Because if I had done that, all they would have learned is who has power, not what's right." He paused, then added, "Sometimes you have to let ignorance reveal itself fully before truth can walk in without resistance." Amara looked down, twisting the strap of her backpack between her fingers. "It still feels like we lost." He shook his head. "No, sweetheart, we didn't lose. We simply haven't finished." Before she could reply, footsteps approached. Marcus Green, the security officer from the jet bridge, stood before them, holding his cap respectfully. Sir," he corrected himself, still unsure how to address Everett. "They've asked me to escort you to the lounge while the situation's reviewed." Everett smiled faintly. "Reviewed? That's an interesting word for something so visible." Marcus hesitated, clearly uneasy. "I just follow orders, course." "Sir, but if it means anything, I think what happened was wrong." "It does mean something," Everett said. "Because you noticed." Marcus nodded, gesturing toward the nearby doors marked Sky North Executive Lounge. The logo gleamed under the warm light, the same one Everett had approved during rebranding 3 months ago. It felt surreal to walk toward it as if he were just another passenger. Inside, the lounge was all glass and quiet luxury soft jazz, leather seats, and the smell of roasted coffee beans. Behind the counter, an attendant in a navy blazer greeted them with a polite smile. "Welcome to Sky North Lounge. May I see your membership card?" Sir Marcus began to explain, but Everett simply handed over his boarding pass. The attendant scanned it, frowned, then straightened abruptly when the system flashed the corporate owner's tag linked to his name. Her smile faltered, turning into nervous recognition. "Oh, Dr. Cole, of course. Please, right this way." Mar looked up sharply. "She knows you." Everett gave a quiet nod. The system remembers what people forget. They were led to a private conference room. Moments later, the glass door opened again. Olivia Sanderson, Sky North's chief operating officer, entered briskly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She carried an expression halfway between alarm and embarrassment. "Dr. Cole," she began, "I just landed from Dallas when I got the call. They told me there was some confusion." Her eyes flicked toward Marcus, then back at Everett. "But no one mentioned it was you." Everett's tone was even. "I didn't mention it either." Olivia sighed. "I should have been there to brief the staff after the acquisition. We were planning to announce your visit next week. I preferred to see the airline as it is," he said, "not as it performs for its owner." Her face flushed. "I understand. And what you saw, well, I'm deeply sorry." Everett folded his hands. "You don't need to apologize for what you didn't do, but you are responsible for what your system allows." Olivia took a seat across from him. "Tell me exactly what happened." He recounted everything in calm, precise detail, the unnecessary ID checks, the repeated insinuations, the downgrade threats. He never raised his voice, but every sentence landed like a measured strike. Amara added quiet confirmation, her voice trembling only once. Marcus filled in the parts he witnessed, defending neither side, but painting the truth as cleanly as he could. When they finished, silence settled over the room. Olivia exhaled slowly. "This isn't the company we want to be." Everett looked at her steadily. "Then prove it." Olivia hesitated. "What would you like me to do?" He leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "I'm not asking for punishment. I'm asking for reflection. Bring her here. Linda Parks." Olivia asked, "Yes," he said simply. "If I don't speak to her now, the next time she'll only remember shame, not change." It took 15 minutes for Linda to arrive. She walked into the room pale and tense, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles were white. Her eyes darted between Everett and Olivia, realizing the gravity of her mistake. "Miss Parks," Olivia began carefully, "this is Dr. Everett Cole, owner of Sky North Airlines." The air went still. Linda's breath caught in her throat. You're the man you called a fraud." Everett finished gently. Her face flushed crimson. "I didn't mean," he raised a hand, stopping her. "You did mean it. That's why it matters." She looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "I was just following procedure." "Procedure," he repeated softly. That word has excused more harm than hatred ever could. Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought there was a mistake." "There was," he said. "It just wasn't mine." The silence that followed was thick with truth. Amara watched, unsure whether to pity or despise the woman. Marcus stood near the door, silent witness once again. Everett continued, his tone calm but firm. "You're not here to be humiliated. You're here to understand the cost of your assumptions. You thought professionalism would hide prejudice, but it only polished it." Linda swallowed hard. "I didn't realize how I sounded." "That's the point," he said. "You didn't have to think about it." "I did." Olivia shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the floor. The truth had a way of rearranging a room, stripping everyone of easy words. Everett leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Miss Parks, I'm not firing you, but I'm also not forgetting what happened. You will attend every inclusion and ethics session this company offers, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because if you're going to serve people in the sky, you should first learn what equality feels like on the ground." Linda's tears finally fell. "I understand," she whispered. "I hope you will," he replied softly. He turned to Olivia. "This isn't just her failure. It's structural. Review your recruitment, your training materials, your feedback loops. People don't wake up biased. They're trained to stay that way." Olivia nodded, already taking notes. Everett stood. "I'll expect a report in a week." Linda watched him, her voice breaking. "Dr. Cole, I'm sorry for how I treated you and your daughter." He paused at the door, meeting her eyes. "I believe you. Now make it count." When they left the lounge, Amara exhaled deeply, her shoulders finally relaxing. That was powerful. Everett smiled faintly. "Power isn't loud. Amara, it's steady. It doesn't need to crush. It needs to correct." They stepped into the cool night air outside the terminal. The city lights of Chicago shimmered in the distance. Marcus walked beside them, carrying his cap under one arm. "Dr. Cole," he said quietly, "I've seen people yell, threaten, or call lawyers, but I've never seen someone handle it the way you did." Everett glanced at him. "Because anger builds walls. Respect builds doors. I need more doors." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. If you ever need help with that, I'm in. Then stay close, Everett said. We're going to build something better than apologies. As they reached the car service area, a black sedan pulled up. The driver opened the door, unaware of the storm that had passed. Amara slid in first. Before following her, Everett looked back through the glass wall of the terminal. Inside, Linda stood near the lounge window, watching them. Her face was pale, but change softened by something that looked like shame and awakening mixed together. Everett thought of his mother again, how she'd once said, "When you have the power to humiliate, choose instead to educate." He smiled faintly, stepped into the car, and whispered to Amara, "Lesson 1. Completed." The sound of rain began to tap softly against the glass walls of Chicago O'Hare as Dr. Everett Cole and Amara stepped back toward the jet bridge. The terminal had emptied of the earlier bustle, leaving behind the hollow echoes of announcements and the rhythmic whir of cleaning machines. Marcus Green followed a few steps behind, silent but attentive, as if instinct told him the night was not yet done. Everett stopped near the window overlooking the runway. The lights shimmered on the wet asphalt, stretching like long fingers into the distance. He took a deep breath, the air tinged with jet fuel and coffee, the familiar scent of travel and fatigue. Amara stood beside him, hugging her backpack, her face calm but distant. "You handled her better than anyone could," Marcus said quietly. "I don't know how you stayed that calm." Everett smiled faintly. "Calm is a form of power. Officer Green, most people mistake volume for strength." Marcus nodded, thoughtful. "Still, I don't think she'll ever forget what happened." "Good," Everett replied. "For change to happen, memory must sting a little." He looked out at the dark sky. "I've spent my life building engines, systems, things that move people faster. But maybe what we need now is something that slows us down long enough to notice each other." Amara turned to him, her voice soft but earnest. "Is that why you bought the airline?" Everett chuckled. "I bought it because they were going bankrupt. But maybe it's becoming something more than business." A sudden voice from behind interrupted them. "Dr. Cole." They turned. Olivia Sanderson approached briskly, umbrella in hand, her coat still damp from the rain. "I just got off a call with headquarters. The board's demanding a full incident report. I told them I'd handle it personally." Everett raised an eyebrow. "And what does handle mean tonight?" Olivia hesitated. "It means we'll begin an internal inquiry immediately." "The video from Ms. Chen has already gone viral." Amara's head snapped up. "Viral?" "Yes," Olivia said. "She posted it on social media before leaving the terminal. It's already trending under the tag, Flight 942. People are outraged. Some are calling it the Sky North bias case." Everett let out a slow exhale. "So truth travels faster than planes now." Olivia grimaced. "The comments are brutal. Some defend you. Others attack the crew. The media is asking for a statement." Marcus looked between them. "Shouldn't the company handle that?" Everett shook his head. "The company will handle the paperwork. I'll handle the people." He turned to Amara. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but there was a storm behind her eyes. "They think they can treat people like that and just apologize later. It's not fair." Everett put a hand on her shoulder. "Life rarely is, but fairness isn't automatic. It's built." The hallway lights flickered slightly as another wave of rain rolled over the terminal. The sound was steady, almost cleansing. "Olivia," Everett said after a long pause, "I want every employee to know that this isn't about punishment. It's about responsibility. We can't erase what happened, but we can make it impossible to repeat." "I'll arrange a company-wide briefing," she said, "but the press will demand answers before sunrise. Then give them the truth." Everett replied simply, "Tell them the owner was on board and saw his own company through a passenger's eyes. Tell them he didn't like what he saw." Olivia's eyes softened. "You really mean to go public with this?" He smiled faintly. "Why not? It's already public. Better to lead the conversation than chase it." Marcus nodded in quiet agreement. If more people in charge did that, we'd see fewer of these messes. Everett looked at him with a glint of admiration. "You ever think of doing more than security?" Officer Green Marcus blinked. "Like what? Training, oversight, policy work. You seem to see more than most." The young man hesitated, then smiled. "I'd be honored." "Good," Everett said. "You might be hearing from me soon." The rain outside eased into a drizzle. The reflection of the runway lights shimmered across the window like molten gold. For a few moments, silence filled the air again, peaceful but charged, like the breath before a verdict. Then Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced down, frowning. "It's starting. News outlets are tagging the video to your name. They've connected you to Sky North." Amara looked up. "So everyone knows now." "Yes," Olivia said, lowering her phone. "And the comments are overwhelming." Everett's expression didn't change. "That's all right. People should know what bias looks like. It's too easy to pretend it doesn't exist when it happens quietly." He turned back to the window, voice softer now. "For years I sat in meetings where people talked about diversity like it was a brand. Maybe tonight is the night it becomes a reality check." Olivia leaned against the wall. "You're going to change this company. Everett, I can feel it." He smiled gently. "Not alone. Change isn't a solo flight." At that moment, Amara's phone vibrated with notifications. Her social feed was flooded with clips from the incident, people debating, arguing, sympathizing. She scrolled through, her eyes wide. "Dad, look at this." Someone wrote, "The calmest man in the room exposed the loudest prejudice." Everett glanced at the screen and chuckled. "That's generous. I wasn't calm. I was simply tired of the same story." Olivia looked at him seriously. "You realize tomorrow, this becomes a headline. Investors will call. Journalists will swarm. The FAA might even ask questions. I expected worse." Everett said, "Systems don't change in silence. They change when someone shakes them." He turned to Marcus. "Officer Green, one more favor. Can you escort Ms. Parks home tonight? No cameras, no reporters. She'll need time to face what's coming." Marcus nodded. "Consider it done." Everett thanked him with a nod of respect. "You did your job well today, son. Sometimes doing nothing but staying fair is the bravest act in a room full of assumptions." Marcus smiled faintly, saluting lightly before walking off. Olivia stayed behind, adjusting her coat. "What's your next move?" Everett looked down the empty jet bridge, its metal floor gleaming faintly under the light. "We hold a meeting first thing in the morning. Every executive, every department head. Then we rebuild the training structure from scratch. And afterward, public reform, not just press releases." Olivia hesitated. "That's going to be expensive. So is ignorance." He replied, "We've paid for that long enough." Amara smiled for the first time since the flight. "You sound like a teacher." Her father looked at her warmly. "Maybe teaching is what real leadership looks like." They stood there together for a while, father and daughter, watching planes take off into the damp night sky. Each aircraft lifted through clouds of rain into invisible light. And Everett thought about all the people carried by those wings, different colors, stories, lives, all trusting the same sky. Datamar asked softly, "Do you think people can really change?" He looked at her, eyes reflecting the lights beyond the glass, only when they see themselves clearly for the first time. Tonight, some did. As they turned to leave, the faint glow of a phone screen near the gate caught Everett's attention. A young maintenance worker was watching the viral clip, shaking his head in disbelief. When he noticed Everett watching, his eyes widened. "Sir, are you the guy from the video?" Everett smiled kindly. "Depends which part you saw. The problem or the solution?" The worker grinned sheepishly. "Both, I guess." "Then remember both," Everett said. "That's how we get better." They walked away down the quiet corridor, footsteps echoing. Behind them, the maintenance worker stared after them for a long moment, replaying the video again, not for scandal, but for understanding. Outside, the storm finally broke, leaving only a clean, cool silence over the airport. In that silence, Everett Cole knew something irreversible had begun not just for Sky North Airlines, but for everyone who'd seen that video and recognized a piece of themselves in it. Morning light spilled through the wide windows of Everett Cole's downtown office, soft and pale against the steel skyline of Chicago. The city was waking, but inside the Sky North headquarters, the day had already begun with unease. Phones rang without pause. Notifications blinked across screens, and every monitor in the PR department showed the same headline: "Airline owner humiliated on his own flight." Everett stood before the window, coffee in hand, the calm center in a storm of chaos. Amara sat quietly on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. The viral video now had over 12 million views overnight. Hashtags flooded every platform. Wrong. Flight 1742, Larry Sky North bias. Justice in the sky. Some called him a hero of restraint. Others accused him of staging the entire event. But Everett wasn't watching the comments. He was thinking about what to do next. Olivia Sanderson entered briskly, tablet in hand, her expression both tired and determined. "It's everywhere. Everett, CNN, BBC, The Atlantic, even local channels. Half the media wants an interview. The other half wants a statement of apology from Sky North." Everett turned slowly. "Apology from me." "From the company," she said, though some headlines are already twisting it into something else. "CEO orchestrates bias scandal for publicity." "It's getting ugly." Amara frowned. "People can twist anything." "They can," Everett said. "That's why we have to choose clarity over noise." He set his cup down. "Schedule a press conference for noon. No PR spin, no rehearsed lines, just honesty." Olivia hesitated. "Are you sure the board's nervous? Some investors are hinting at temporary withdrawal until the situation settles." He gave her a steady look. "They'll come back when they see what integrity looks like in motion." Olivia sighed, but there was admiration behind her exhaustion. "I'll set it up." As she left, Marcus Green entered quietly, dressed in a crisp shirt and tie this time instead of his airport uniform. "Sir," he said, "you asked to see me this morning." Everett smiled. "Yes. I wanted to thank you again for your fairness yesterday, and to offer you something." Marcus looked uncertain. "A job, a position," Everett corrected. "Director of Ethics and Accountability. You'll oversee every passenger-related complaint, training, and policy review. I need someone grounded, someone who understands both sides." Marcus blinked, surprised. "I don't have a college degree for that." Everett chuckled. Neither did my grandfather when he built an aircraft engine that changed history. You have something better judgment. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll do my best. Good, Everett said. You'll report directly to me. Amar grinned from the sofa. I told you I liked you. Marcus smiled shyly. I didn't think it'd be like this. Everett turned serious. It's not a favor. It's a responsibility. What happened on Flight 1742 will become our mirror, and you'll help make sure we keep looking. He handed Marcus a slim folder. Inside were preliminary notes for a new corporate initiative, the Equity in Flight Program. Marcus scanned the first few lines. Mandatory empathy training for all flight crews. Passenger dignity metrics. Anonymous reporting system. This is huge, Marcus said quietly. It's just the beginning, Everett replied. At that moment, Olivia returned, slightly breathless. Media teams are arriving early. They've brought camera trucks outside the building. We're streaming live at noon. Perfect, Everett said calmly. Prepare the conference room. By 11:50, every major outlet had gathered in Sky North's headquarters atrium. The room was glass-walled, minimalist, yet charged with anticipation. Reporters murmured, adjusting microphones and testing cameras. The viral video played silently on a side screen, Linda confronting Everett. Amara's quiet discomfort, the calm rebuttal that had since been replayed millions of times. When Everett entered, the noise fell to a hush. He walked to the podium, no notes in hand, wearing a simple gray suit and a look of unforced composure. Amara and Olivia stood at the back, watching. Marcus took a discreet place near the wall, observing everything. Good afternoon, Everett began, his voice even but resonant. Yesterday, I boarded Flight 1742 as a passenger. Today, I stand before you as the owner of Sky North Airlines. Cameras clicked. He continued, unflinching. What happened aboard that flight was not an isolated misunderstanding. It was a symptom of something larger, something that reaches beyond one person, one crew, or one airline. It is what happens when bias hides behind procedure, when politeness replaces empathy, and when power forgets humility. A ripple moved through the crowd. Everett's tone remained steady. I wasn't humiliated. I was reminded of how easy it is for any of us to become blind to our own systems. I bought this airline to rebuild it, not just financially, but ethically. And that work begins today. He paused, letting the silence breathe. To the passengers who witnessed it, to the crew who learned from it, and to every employee watching now, this isn't about blame. It's about balance. Sky North will not fire its way out of its conscience. We'll educate our way through it. A reporter raised a hand. Dr. Cole, do you plan to press charges or issue compensation? He shook his head. No. Accountability isn't always legal. It's human. Oh, we'll invest in change, not revenge. Another voice. Dr. Cole. Critics are calling this a publicity stunt. Everett smiled faintly. If equality is a stunt, then I suppose I'm guilty. Laughter rippled lightly through the room, but the weight of his sincerity quickly stilled it. He looked directly into the cameras. We are launching a new company-wide reform, the Sky North Dignity Initiative. It will measure not profit, but respect. Every employee's evaluation will include empathy standards. Every manager's promotion will depend on cultural accountability. And every passenger, no matter who they are, will have the right to be treated as if they belong. Amara's chest swelled with pride as she watched. Her father wasn't speaking as a CEO. He was speaking as a human being who understood what justice sounded like when spoken softly. Everett finished with a simple line. No airline owns the sky. We simply share it. And it's time we start acting like it. He stepped back from the podium. The room erupted in applause, not the polite kind, but the kind that comes from people who feel they've just witnessed something rare. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Everett turned toward Olivia. You can handle the rest. As he exited through a side door, Marcus followed, his expression half awe, half disbelief. Sir, that was extraordinary. Everett smiled. It was overdue. They stepped into the quiet hallway. Amara ran up, hugging her father tightly. You were amazing. He kissed the top of her head. You were my strength. As they walked toward the elevator, a staff member hurried over with an envelope. Dr. Cole. This just arrived by courier. No sender name. Everett opened it, unfolding a single page. The handwriting was neat, careful. Dear Dr. Cole, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to earn it. I've enrolled in the empathy training program already. Thank you for choosing to teach instead of destroy. Linda Parks. Everett's face softened. Good, he murmured. Maybe this story won't end with shame after all. Amara smiled faintly. You think she'll really change? I think she already has, he said. The first step of change is seeing the wound. They stepped into the elevator. The doors closed slowly, reflecting their faces, father and daughter, different generations carrying the same mission. Outside, the rain from the previous night had cleared, leaving the sky brilliant and blue. A flock of planes rose into the sunlight one after another, wings flashing silver. Somewhere in that endless sky, Everett thought, there was enough room for everyone. By evening, the city lights of Chicago glowed like scattered fire across the horizon, and the echo of Everett Cole's press conference still rippled through every screen in America. The clip had been replayed across networks, translated into 6 languages, and dissected in online debates that burned through the night. Sky North's website crashed twice from traffic. Its stock fell 5 points in the morning, then climbed 7 by afternoon, as public sentiment turned from outrage to admiration. Everett sat alone in his penthouse study, the window open to the cool air, phone buzzing nonstop with messages from CEOs, senators, and activists. But he wasn't reading those either. His eyes were fixed on one email, the only one that mattered. The subject line read, "Real lesson I needed." It was from Linda Parks. The message was long, humble, and raw. She wrote about how she'd spent the day replaying the video in shame, about her son asking her at breakfast why people online were calling her cruel, and about how she couldn't find words to explain that moment of blind judgment. She promised she would attend every training, talk to her colleagues, and spend the rest of her career making sure passengers like Amara never feel less than human. Everett read it twice, his throat tightening slightly. For the first time since the incident, he allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Downstairs, Amara sat on the couch, her laptop open, watching the world react. Her father's name was now trending globally. People were quoting his line, "No airline owns the sky. We simply share it." Artists turned it into posters. Activists made it a rallying phrase. Yet alongside the praise, there were the darker corners of the internet comments dripping with resentment. Anonymous posts calling him a manipulator, another rich man pretending to care. She closed the screen, her heart heavy. They don't even know him, she whispered. Olivia Sanderson entered quietly, carrying her tablet. It's been a long day, she said. The board's still shaken. Some are proud, others are furious. You went public. They think you've made us vulnerable. Everett rose, turning toward her. We were already vulnerable. The difference is, now we're honest about it. Olivia nodded, though her eyes were tired. There's something else. A major competitor, Aero West, is launching a statement tomorrow. They're calling for transparency in aviation leadership. I think they're using your story to make themselves look progressive. Everett smiled faintly. Then let them. Competition never changed the sky. Only conscience can. He poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to her. Do you remember when we first talked about rebranding? Sky North Olivia laughed softly. You said you didn't want it to be an airline. You wanted it to be a promise. Exactly, he said. And promises are only worth something when they're tested. She nodded, emotion flickering behind her professionalism. You know, Everett, in all my years working in corporate PR, I've never seen anyone turn humiliation into policy. You didn't defend yourself, you defended the idea of decency. Everett's tone softened, because decency is the only thing worth defending. Just then, Marcus Green entered, holding a small folder. Evening, sir. We've had over 2,000 employee responses to the new empathy initiative in less than 24 hours. Olivia raised an eyebrow. 2,000, Marcus nodded, and most of them are positive. Some even volunteered to mentor new hires on ethics. Everett smiled. See, systems do heal when you give people permission to care. Marcus hesitated. There's one more thing. Someone leaked your private company memo to the press, the one about racial bias in executive leadership. Olivia groaned. Oh no, that'll blow up in seconds. Everett remained calm. Let it. I wrote it to be read someday. Might as well be today. Marcus grinned. You really don't scare easily? Do you fear's a poor pilot? Everett said with a chuckle. It only flies in circles. He turned toward Amara, who had been quiet. Sweetheart, you've been scrolling all night. What's on your mind? Amara hesitated. I don't understand why people get so angry when someone stands up for what's right. Everett smiled gently. Because truth rearranges comfort, and people don't like moving furniture they've lived with too long. She laughed softly, shaking her head. You always make things sound poetic. That's because reality is poetry most people refuse to read, he said, his voice low. There was a long pause. Then Olivia's phone vibrated. She glanced down, her expression tightening. Everett, you might want to see this. She handed him the screen. A breaking news banner flashed across it. Anonymous Sky North executive claims, Everett Cole used incident for PR gain. Amara gasped. What? That's a lie. Everett read silently, his jaw tightening only slightly. The article quoted an unnamed senior manager accusing him of stage managing the encounter to promote his corporate agenda. The claim was absurd, but the timing perfect, an hour before the evening news cycle. Olivia's face paled. They're trying to twist the narrative before it settles. It's deliberate. Everett placed the phone down slowly. Let them talk. I don't fight shadows with noise. Truth always waits. Marcus frowned. But this could damage everything. You'll have to respond publicly. Everett walked toward the window, the city stretching endlessly below. No, he said softly. I'll respond quietly. By doing what they fear most, continuing the work. He turned back to them, eyes steady. Tomorrow, I'll meet the union, the press, and the community boards. If they want transparency, they'll get it. Every policy, every decision, open for review. Amara stood, voice trembling with both worry and pride. You're not afraid they'll tear you apart. Everett smiled. You can't be torn apart by people who've never built what you've lived through. The room went silent again, the air thick with respect. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Everett sat alone at his desk, writing in his leather notebook, the same one from the flight. His handwriting was steady, each word deliberate. Public storms are mirrors. Some look and see scandal, others see themselves. Only the brave see lessons. He closed the notebook and leaned back, exhaustion pulling at his shoulders. Through the glass, he could see the reflection of the Sky North Tower logo, still glowing in the night. Beneath it, small groups of employees lingered outside, talking, debating, holding candles. Some carried signs that read, "Dignity takes flight." Everett felt a swell of quiet pride. The movement had begun without him forcing it. The people were claiming the message as their own, and that was exactly what he wanted. His phone buzzed again. A text from Linda Parks. "I spoke to the training team today. I told them the hardest thing isn't admitting you were wrong, it's believing you can still be better. Thank you for letting me try." Everett replied simply, "Keep trying. You're part of the solution now." He set the phone down and stared into the skyline once more. For years, he had fought to prove that progress could coexist with grace. Tonight, he realized grace was progress itself, the kind that moved not in headlines, but in hearts. Down the hall, Amara peeked in, barefoot and sleepy. "You're still working. Just thinking," he said softly. She walked over and hugged him from behind. "I think Grandma would have been proud." He smiled, eyes glistening. She always believed the sky was big enough for everyone. They stood together in the soft hum of the city lights, the weight of the world pressing gently but no longer painfully. For the first time since the incident, Everett felt peace not because the battle was over, but because it had finally begun in the right way. The following morning broke gray and heavy over downtown Chicago. Rain streaked down the glass walls of the Sky North Tower, and thunder rumbled like distant arguments waiting to erupt. Inside the 42nd floor boardroom, a dozen executives sat around a long polished table, faces drawn tight with tension. Some avoided eye contact, others stared at Everett Cole with a mix of fear and frustration. The viral scandal had shaken the airline, but Everett's decision to face it publicly had shaken the board even more. Olivia Sanderson stood near the projector, hands clasped, watching the storm brewing not just outside, but within the room. Marcus Green sat quietly beside her, taking notes, wearing his new ID badge that still looked too new against his crisp shirt. At the head of the table, Everett sat composed, pen in hand, posture calm yet commanding. The meeting began with Thomas Burke, Chief Financial Officer, his voice tight with irritation. "Everett, with all due respect, your press conference may have won you applause online, but it's created chaos in our investor relations. Our quarterly projections are down 12% overnight. Stockholders are panicking." Everett didn't look up. "They're not panicking. They're watching. They want to know whether this company stands for numbers or values, and I intend to show them both can coexist." Thomas scoffed. "With all due respect, values don't pay dividends." Everett raised his eyes slowly. "Neither does fear, Thomas, and we've been trading in that currency for years." The room went silent. Then another voice, Madeline Crow, head of human resources, spoke, cautious but firm. "Everett, I agree with your intention, but this kind of reform, these empathy trainings, these ethics evaluations, they're expensive, disruptive, and frankly, difficult to quantify." Everett turned to her, tone measured. "Madeline, can you quantify humiliation? Can you assign a value to dignity?" She hesitated. "No, but we can't rebuild morale overnight." "Then we start today," he replied simply. Olivia stepped forward, clicking a button on the projector. A slide appeared showing hundreds of internal messages from employees' words of support, gratitude, and renewed pride. "Before we talk about losses," she said, "let's look at gains. Employees feel heard for the first time. We've received over 3,000 voluntary sign-ups for the Dignity Initiative. This isn't chaos, it's momentum." Thomas frowned. "You're quoting emotional data, not financial stability." Everett leaned back in his chair, hands folded. "Emotional data drives loyalty. Loyalty drives retention. Retention drives revenue. You can't separate humanity from business just because it doesn't fit neatly in a spreadsheet." The argument was interrupted by a chime. The door opened, and a young assistant entered nervously. "Dr. Cole, I'm sorry to interrupt, but CNN is outside the building. They're requesting a live comment on the anonymous executive leak." Olivia sighed quietly. "It's happening faster than we thought." Everett nodded. "Let them wait. They'll get their comment when I'm finished leading my company," Thomas muttered under his breath. "If we still have one by then." Everett's tone sharpened, not loud, but cutting through the air like glass. "Thomas, if this company can't survive integrity, then it doesn't deserve to survive at all." The CFO looked away, chastened. Marcus, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. "Dr. Cole, if I may." Everett gestured for him to speak. "People in the terminals are talking," Marcus said carefully. "I've been visiting airports, listening to crews and ground staff. They're proud, embarrassed, yes, but proud that this conversation finally exists. It's spreading like wildfire. Even crews from other airlines are asking when they can adopt the same program." The executives exchanged surprised glances. Everett smiled faintly. "That's the kind of fire I'm not afraid of." Madeline frowned. "But this kind of attention, it's volatile. You'll need a new communications plan, a legal response strategy, and protection from future leaks. People will come for you now. Everett." He nodded. "Let them come. They'll find transparency, not scandal." A lightning flash illuminated the skyline behind him. For a moment, the reflection of the room shimmered across the glass men and women sitting under the watchful gaze of a man who refused to be shaken. Olivia spoke softly, but with conviction. "Maybe it's time we stop thinking like an airline and start acting like a movement." Everett turned toward her, eyes glinting with quiet approval. "Exactly. The sky doesn't divide people. It connects them. Let's make sure Sky North does the same." Then, unexpectedly, Thomas pushed back his chair. "You think inspiration can fix systems? This company doesn't run on speeches, Everett. It runs on compliance, contracts, and cash flow." Everett rose to his feet, calm but firm. "And yet, Thomas, none of those things kept a single passenger from feeling less than human last week. Maybe it's time we add conscience to our list of assets." The silence that followed was thunderous. Olivia watched the exchange like a storm crossing over water, violent but cleansing. Finally, Everett gathered his papers. "You all know where I stand. Reform isn't optional. We'll restructure leadership training, introduce cultural equity boards, and make empathy a measurable performance standard. If that makes anyone uncomfortable, that's a sign it's working." He started toward the door. "I'll face the press myself." Olivia followed him out into the corridor. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "I know, but I needed to remind them Who's piloting this plane? As they walked toward the elevator, the hum of the newsroom downstairs grew louder, the sound of headlines being born. When the elevator doors opened, a crowd of reporters waited, cameras flashing like bursts of lightning. Everett stepped forward calmly. "Good morning," he said, voice steady. "Before you ask your questions, let me clarify something. There was no leak, only light. And the more we shine it, the less darkness there is to hide in." The reporters shouted over one another, but Everett kept walking, each step deliberate, grounded. The sound of his footsteps echoed like punctuation marks in the marble hall. Marcus watched from the mezzanine above, pride swelling in his chest. "That man doesn't just run an airline," he murmured to Olivia. "He's changing the altitude of leadership itself." Olivia smiled faintly, and making the rest of us breathe cleaner air. Outside, the rain had stopped. The storm had moved east, leaving a faint rainbow arching over the city skyline. Everett paused at the glass doors of the lobby, staring up at it before stepping into the drizzle. For a brief moment, he thought of his mother again, the woman who had raised him on stories about strength that didn't shout and kindness that didn't ask permission. He smiled to himself. "Still flying by your compass. Mom, back upstairs." The boardroom remained silent. Thomas stared at the empty chair at the head of the table, then turned toward Madeline. "He's either going to save this company," he muttered, "or redefine it so much it becomes something else entirely." Madeline looked out the window, where the rainbow still lingered faintly above the skyline. Maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. The sun had barely risen when Everett Cole arrived at the Sky North Training Center on the city's west side. The building wasn't glamorous gray concrete, metal siding, and a row of hangar doors that once opened to maintenance bays. Today, it was where the airline's new chapter would begin. A small crowd of employees had already gathered near the entrance pilots. Flight attendants, mechanics, gate agents, all in various uniforms, sipping coffee and murmuring among themselves. The air smelled of fuel and fresh rain. Everett paused before stepping inside, quietly taking in the sight. These were the people who made the company breathe, not the ones in suits, but the ones whose hands and voices kept travelers safe. Inside, Olivia Sanderson stood near a makeshift stage, speaking with Marcus Green. A banner behind them read in bold blue letters, "The Sky North Dignity Initiative, Day 1. Cameras from local media were discreetly set up, ready to capture the moment, but instructed not to interfere. Olivia spotted Everett and approached with a relieved smile. "You made it early. I wanted to see their faces before they hear mine," he said. Marcus nodded in agreement. There's something powerful about starting change, where it matters most. Some of them were nervous, but most are hopeful. Everett looked around at the group, different ages, accents, and skin tones. Hope is fuel. Let's give it direction. When he stepped onto the small platform, the chatter quieted. There was no microphone, no fanfare, only the sound of distant planes overhead. Everett's voice carried easily, calm yet commanding. "Good morning. I know the last week has been difficult for all of us. You've seen your company on every news feed, your uniforms on every screen, your name in conversations that didn't always sound fair. But I didn't come here to talk about damage. I came here to talk about flight." He paused, scanning the faces before him. "You see, flight isn't just about movement. It's about balance. Every aircraft must be built around equilibrium. Too much weight in one direction, and the system fails. The same is true for us. Somewhere along the way, our balance shifted. Procedure replaced compassion. Rules replaced respect. We became efficient, but forgot to be kind. That's what ends today." The room was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. "I was tested on that flight," Everett continued, "not as an owner, but as a man, a father. And I realize that change doesn't begin in boardrooms. It begins right here, with the people who touch lives before the plane even leaves the ground." A hand rose from the crowd, a middle-aged flight attendant named Clara Reyes. "Dr. Cole," she said, her voice hesitant. "How do we make sure this isn't just another corporate speech we've heard promises before?" Everett smiled gently. "By starting small and staying honest. This program isn't for reports or media coverage. It's for moments when you choose to pause before assuming, listen before judging, and help before being asked." Another voice came from the back, young, uncertain. "But what if passengers don't change? Some of them treat us badly, too." Everett nodded. "Then you lead by example. Compassion isn't agreement, it's understanding. You don't have to let others walk over you. You just have to refuse to walk over them in return." Soft murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Marcus stood at the side, watching the transformation unfold quietly, the tension from earlier days easing into something more human. Everett continued, "You'll all go through empathy training. Yes, but this isn't about memorizing responses or repeating slogans. It's about rediscovering why you chose this profession: to serve, to connect, to lift others. If we do that, the numbers will follow, the trust will grow, and the skies will become fair again." When he finished, there was no applause at first, only stillness, a kind that meant people were thinking, feeling, absorbing. Then, slowly, one person clapped, then another. Within seconds, the entire room erupted into applause that felt less like celebration and more like a promise kept. Olivia met Everett's eyes from across the room. A proud, quiet acknowledgement. Marcus grinned, clapping along with the rest. And for the first time since the scandal, Everett felt the weight on his shoulders lighten, not because the storm had passed, but because people were starting to believe in calm after it. After the event, as the crowd dispersed, Everett lingered to talk with individual staff members. Clara approached him again, this time with tears in her eyes. "My daughter saw that video," she said softly. "She told me she's proud I work here now. I haven't heard that in years." Everett reached out, clasping her hand. "Then we're already succeeding." As they spoke, Marcus received a message on his tablet and frowned. "Sir, we might have another situation brewing." Everett turned to him. "What kind of situation?" Marcus hesitated. "Anonymous threats online. Someone claiming they have inside footage proving you provoked the incident." Olivia's expression hardened. "A smear campaign," Everett sighed, not in frustration, but with weary understanding. "When you change the story, the old one fights back." Marcus looked ready for battle. "Should we issue a statement? Deny it immediately?" Everett shook his head. "No. Let truth do what it does best: outlast lies." He started walking toward the hangar doors, where the morning light spilled in like a quiet curtain. "Marcus, Olivia, the more they try to twist this, the more people will see who we are. Every attack just gives us another opportunity to stay graceful." Outside, the clouds had started to part, the first streaks of sunlight breaking through. Everett stopped to watch a Sky North jet lift off the runway in the distance. Its wings glinted briefly in the light, rising higher into clear air. Amara arrived moments later, carrying a folder from her father's office. "Mom said you left these behind," she said teasingly, though her voice softened when she noticed his expression. "You okay?" He smiled faintly. "Better than I've been in years." She looked toward the departing plane. "It's kind of beautiful, isn't it? How something that big can still lift so easily." Everett nodded. "It's all about balance. Weight doesn't matter as long as the lift is strong enough." They stood side by side for a long while, watching the sky open wider. Behind them, Marcus and Olivia exchanged quiet words about logistics, training schedules, and media control, but Everett barely heard them. His focus was on the horizon, on the symbolic ascent that mirrored what he hoped was happening within his company, within people, within himself. Later, as they walked toward the parking lot, a young mechanic called out, "Dr. Cole, we're with you." Others joined in, their voices echoing through the hangar, spontaneous and genuine. Everett turned, raised a hand, and said simply, "We're with each other." That night, the news networks didn't show outrage or protest. Instead, they showed something rare: hundreds of Sky North employees holding hands in front of the training center, reciting together the words Everett had spoken that morning. "No airline owns the sky. We share it." For once, the internet agreed. Comment sections filled with messages of support, stories of passengers recalling kindnesses they'd received from crew members, and strangers writing about dignity in their own workplaces. The incident that had begun with humiliation had now sparked something larger, a conversation that reached beyond gates and runways, into classrooms, offices, and living rooms. Everett watched it unfold from his study. Amara asleep on the couch beside him, her head resting on a book. He whispered quietly to himself, "Sometimes turbulence is the only way to reach new altitude." 3 weeks later, dawn broke pale and silver across O'Hare International Airport. The day was calm, almost unnaturally so, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Dr. Everett Cole stood near Gate 28 wearing a navy blazer and carrying nothing but a single briefcase. There was no press, no entourage, just him, his daughter Amara, and the soft hum of morning travelers moving through the terminal. Today was the first official flight under Sky North's new initiative, a route that would quietly mark history's Chicago to Atlanta. Flight 219, a route deliberately chosen because it was the same one Everett had taken during the scandal weeks earlier. The symbolism was deliberate but not theatrical. This wasn't a victory lap. It was a test of healing. Beside him, Olivia Sanderson and Marcus Green were coordinating logistics with the ground team, making sure the new equity flight protocol was executed perfectly. Crews had undergone empathy workshops, and passengers had been briefed on Sky North's Shared Sky campaign, simple principles of mutual respect, inclusion, and kindness. As Everett approached the jet bridge, he spotted a familiar figure standing near the boarding gate Linda Parks, the flight attendant who had once humiliated him. She looked nervous but determined, her uniform crisp, her posture upright. When their eyes met, she stepped forward immediately. "Dr. Cole," she began softly, voice trembling just enough to reveal sincerity. "Thank you for allowing me back." Everett smiled gently. "You didn't need permission, Linda. You needed perspective, and you found it." Her eyes glistened. "I've been attending every training, mentoring others. I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure it never happens again to anyone." He nodded. "That's all I ever asked." Amara watched the exchange, her expression softening. There was no trace of anger left in her only quiet pride. "Dad," she whispered, "you turned your pain into her redemption." Everett smiled faintly. "That's the only kind of victory worth having." As they boarded, passengers recognized Everett but said nothing. Some nodded respectfully, others smiled warmly. The mood on the aircraft was different from any flight he'd ever taken, not because people knew who he was, but because they could feel the difference. The crew greeted passengers with genuine warmth, not forced courtesy. A middle-aged man in economy helped a young mother lift her stroller. A teenage boy offered his aisle seat to an elderly woman without being asked. Inside the cockpit, Captain Lara Benton adjusted her headset. "Welcome aboard Sky North Flight 219. Our first journey under the Dignity Initiative. We're proud to have Dr. Everett Cole on board, not as our owner today, but as our fellow traveler. Let's make this flight one that reminds us all why the sky belongs to everyone." A ripple of applause followed, light but heartfelt. As the plane ascended through thin clouds, Everett glanced around the cabin, observing, not judging, just watching. He noticed Linda offering an extra blanket to a nervous passenger. Marcus quietly conversing with a family traveling for a funeral. Amara sketching the sky through the window. He took a deep breath. For once, peace didn't feel distant. It felt earned. Midway through the flight, turbulence hit a sudden pocket of air that jolted the plane. Gas rippled through the cabin, and drinks sloshed. Linda steadied herself and immediately comforted a crying toddler. Her calm voice carried through the aisle. "It's all right, sweetheart. Just the sky reminding us it's alive." Everett watched her with quiet admiration. Once, this woman's tone had carried judgment. Now, it carried reassurance. It was transformation in motion. The turbulence subsided, replaced by a tranquil silence. Then, unexpectedly, a soft chime sounded through the speaker system. The captain's voice came again, slightly hesitant. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you look out your left windows, you'll see a rare sight, an unbroken double rainbow stretching across the clouds. We don't see this often up here. Consider it a reminder that even storms leave beauty behind." Passengers leaned toward the windows. Gasps and soft laughter filled the cabin. Even the most reserved travelers couldn't help but smile. Amara pressed her face close to the glass. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Everett looked out too, his reflection merging with the colors of the rainbow. "It's proof," he said quietly, "that light always finds a way through." As the plane continued its flight, a woman in business class stood and turned toward Everett. "Dr. Cole, may I say something?" He nodded. She smiled, tears in her eyes. "I was on your flight, the one that went viral. I didn't speak up that day. I was afraid. I still regret that. But today, seeing all this, the way people treat each other now, it's different. Thank you for not letting bitterness win." Everett's eyes softened. "You don't have to regret silence. You just have to learn to use your voice when it counts next time." When the plane touched down in Atlanta, the passengers applauded spontaneously. Not because of the landing, but because of what it meant. They knew, even if only subconsciously, that they'd just been part of something bigger than travel. As everyone disembarked, Linda approached Amara. "You've got your father's grace," she said warmly, "and his strength." Amara smiled shyly. "I think he'd say those are the same thing." Outside the terminal, a light crowd had gathered employees, journalists, everyday travelers holding signs that read "Shared Sky," "Shared Humanity." Cameras flashed, but Everett didn't pose. He simply greeted people, shook hands, and listened. Marcus handed him a small folder. "Sir, these are the numbers from the employee survey. 93% say the culture's changed for the better. The training's being requested by other airlines already." Everett opened the folder, scanned it, then closed it with a satisfied smile. "Good. But let's not sell a program. Let's share a principle." Olivia joined them. tablet in hand. And there's one more thing. The Department of Transportation just sent a message. They're adopting the Dignity Initiative as a federal model for all carriers. They're calling it the Cole Standard. Everett froze for a moment, taken aback. They what? She grinned. Congratulations, boss. You just rewrote aviation ethics. The crowd around them began cheering as word spread. Everett raised his hands, quieting them. This isn't about me, he said into a waiting microphone. It's about what we choose to become when life humbles us. I didn't build the Cole Standard. We did every passenger who refused to stay silent, every worker who showed empathy, every critic who forced us to be better. This isn't an ending, it's our altitude check. Reporters leaned forward, scribbling his words. Everett looked around one last time the airport, the sky, the people. He could feel something shift inside him, not pride, but a calm acknowledgement that the pain had finally found purpose. As the day ended, Amara walked beside him toward the waiting car. So, what happens next? She asked softly. He smiled, sliding on his sunglasses as the sun dipped low. Next he said, We fly higher but slower. The world needs steady pilots now. Behind them, the sound of engines roared a new fleet of Sky North planes taking off, each marked with a small silver emblem near the tail. 2 open hands beneath a rising sun. A symbol of dignity, born from one moment of injustice. Amara looked back and whispered, You changed the sky. Dad. Everett shook his head gently. No, sweetheart. The sky was always kind. We just had to learn to see it that way again. The night after Flight 219 landed, Chicago glowed beneath a canopy of stars, the kind of clear sky pilots called infinite visibility. Dr. Everett Cole sat alone on the balcony of his penthouse, a mug of tea in his hands. Below him, the city pulsed quietly, the hum of traffic, the whisper of the lake breeze, and somewhere in the distance, the low, steady drone of departing planes. He had spent a lifetime chasing success, speed, and perfection. Tonight, for the first time, he felt something rarer. Stillness. The events of the past weeks had become more than a story. They had become a movement. News anchors spoke about the Cole Standard as a turning point in aviation history. Airlines across the country announced their own empathy programs. Even corporations outside aviation had begun adopting Sky North's model, rebranding it as a symbol of modern leadership. Everett's inbox overflowed with messages from people he would never meet, single mothers thanking him for giving their children hope, flight attendants writing about rediscovered pride, passengers sharing small acts of kindness inspired by his words. Yet, despite all the noise, Everett found his peace in the quiet moments like this one, where he could finally hear his own thoughts without interruption. Amara walked out onto the balcony, wrapped in a gray blanket. "You're not sleeping again," she said softly, sitting beside him. "I'm thinking," he replied, "about how quickly everything changes when people decide to see each other differently." She smiled faintly. "You sound like one of your speeches." He laughed quietly, maybe because speeches are just thoughts spoken out loud. They sat together for a long while, watching the air traffic patterns above the twinkling lines of aircraft cutting across the dark sky. Each light represented a story, a journey, a life in motion. "Do you think people will remember?" Amara asked suddenly. "Not you, but what happened. The lesson." Everett's gaze followed one particularly bright plane until it vanished into the distance. "Maybe not all of them," he said, "but someone will. And that's enough. Change doesn't need everyone. It just needs enough people who refuse to go back." A soft chime sounded from his phone. It was an email from Marcus Green. Everett opened it, and a short video began to play a training session recorded earlier that day. In it, Linda Park stood before a group of new flight attendants, her voice steady, her tone confident. "In this job," she said, "we meet every kind of person, kind, rude, rich, poor, loud, quiet. But no matter who walks through that cabin door, our job isn't to judge, it's to welcome. Because the moment they step onto that plane, the sky belongs to them too." Applause filled the frame. Linda looked different, stronger, freer. Everett's lips curved into a quiet smile. "She found her wings," he murmured. Amara rested her head on his shoulder. "So did you." The next morning, Everett arrived at Sky North headquarters earlier than usual. The lobby was bustling with staff preparing for a global conference call. Screens displayed headlines from major outlets. "The Cole Standard goes global." The airline's logo shimmered beside a new tagline: "Shared Sky, Shared Humanity." Olivia Sanderson approached, dressed sharply as always but softer in her demeanor. "Big day," she said. "We're officially launching partnerships with 3 international airlines: London, Nairobi, and Tokyo. They're all adopting our model." Everett smiled. "That's more than I ever hoped for." Marcus joined them, holding a folder. "And one more thing, remember the anonymous executive who leaked false information about you. They came forward and publicly apologized. Turns out, after watching the changes, they wanted to make amends." Olivia raised her brows. "Redemption's contagious?" "Apparently." Everett nodded. "Good. Let's hope it keeps spreading." As the conference began, screens around the world flickered to life. Faces appeared: executives, crew members, reporters, even students from universities studying the initiative. Everett spoke last. His tone was measured, his words simple. "When I bought this airline, I thought success meant control. Now I know it means connection. We can't control the skies, or the storms, or even the people who misunderstand us. But we can control how we respond with patience, empathy, and truth. Those are the wings that never fail." He paused, scanning the grid of faces watching him from across continents. "Remember, this leadership isn't a seat in first class. It's walking through the aisles, making sure everyone feels they belong." There was a moment of silence after he finished. Then the entire call erupted into applause. Not the kind born of obligation, but the kind that comes from being part of something meaningful. Later that day, Everett received a letter written in careful handwriting on soft paper. No return address. He unfolded it slowly. "Dear Dr. Cole, I watched your story with my students this week. I teach at a small school in Mississippi where some of them have never been on a plane. After we finished, one little boy said, 'If the sky is for everyone, then maybe the world is too.' You've made him believe that he belongs somewhere bigger than his town. Thank you for showing us that dignity doesn't need altitude. It just needs courage. Mrs. Helen Armstrong, Grade 6, Teacher." Everett folded the letter carefully, his throat tightening. That single sentence, "the sky is for everyone," summed up everything he had worked for. That evening, Sky North hosted a small ceremony at the airport hangar, attended by employees and their families. The massive hangar doors were open, framing the horizon in gold and blue. A new aircraft stood gleaming under the lights, its nose painted with the emblem of 2 open hands beneath a rising sun. As music played softly in the background, Everett stepped to the microphone. "This plane isn't just another addition to our fleet," he said. "It's a reminder that no matter where we come from or what we've endured, we can always choose to rise. The sky has no prejudice. It holds us all the same way. He turned toward Linda, who stood in the front row, smiling with tears in her eyes. And sometimes, he continued, it's not about who's in first class or coach. It's about who has the courage to grow. After the ceremony, Amara tugged at his sleeve. Dad, can I tell you something? Of course. When I grow up, she said, I don't want to run an airline. I want to build schools in places where kids think the sky's too far away. Everett's smile deepened. Then you'll be flying higher than I ever did. She grinned. I learned from the best pilot. As the crowd dispersed, Everett remained, watching the hangar empty until only the echo of laughter lingered. He walked up to the aircraft, ran his hand across its smooth metal, and whispered, Thank you for teaching me that leadership isn't about altitude. It's about attitude. Outside, the night was clear again, the same infinite sky he had loved since childhood. Planes ascended one by one, their lights tracing gentle paths upward. For the first time, Everett didn't look at them with ownership, but with belonging. He understood now the sky didn't need to be conquered. It just needed to be shared. He closed his eyes, feeling the wind against his face, and smiled. The sky belongs to everyone, he said quietly, and finally, so do I. The story of Dr. Everett Cole reminds us that leadership is not measured by how loudly we demand respect, but by how calmly we choose integrity. When he was wronged, he didn't strike back in anger. He transformed humiliation into hope, turning pain into policy, and creating a legacy that outlasted revenge. His journey teaches us that real strength lies in restraint, and that dignity is the quietest yet most powerful form of defiance. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, Everett's response shows the beauty of choosing empathy over ego. He reminds us that when life confronts us with injustice, we always have two options: to repeat the cycle of bitterness or to rise and rewrite the story. For older generations who have weathered storms of prejudice, loss, or misunderstanding, this story whispers a familiar truth. Healing doesn't come from winning. It comes from understanding. Sometimes, the kindest answer is the most revolutionary one. Thank you for watching and sharing this journey with us. Stories like this remind us that humanity, kindness, and courage still matter. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every click helps us bring more powerful, healing stories to life and together. We can keep spreading light where it's needed most. Stay kind, stay strong, and remember, the sky belongs to everyone.